The content of today's podcast is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. Australian school students are among the most bullied in the world, with parents who have lost children to suicide, warning that they won't be the last unless all governments commit to urgent change. G'day, this is the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every day on Australia's most downloaded parenting podcasts. We are Justin and Kylie Coulson.
The school year is starting around the country, either last week or this week, depending on which state you're in. And in light of the tragic deaths of several children, most of whom were barely into their first year of high school, we really wanted to tackle this tricky subject and hope that we can arm families with some tools to help navigate the challenges that arise when groups of children get together.
Yeah, it's just the end of last year was horrible. The number of headlines that came up, just story after story of beautiful kids who should be with us who are not. Our family's obviously been affected by the loss of life far too soon. And so my heart just broke when one story after another landed. Studies are indicating that 1 in 6 Australian children are on the receiving end, maybe even as many as 1 in 5 or 1 in 4, depending on which study you look at, on the receiving end of being bullied in the last few days to the last week. That's during the school term we're talking. We're at the top of the table, I guess. That's not a good way to look at this one, though. We have more bullying in our schools reported than the US, the UK, New Zealand, Canada, and other similar Western nations. 70% of kids aged 12 to 13, 70% say that they have experienced bullying. This is a big deal.
It's probably an obvious question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What defines bully behaviour?
Yeah, I don't think it is an obvious question. A lot of parents get this wrong. They understandably get defensive, uptight and concerned when their child has a bad time with somebody in their peer group. But just because somebody's had a playground squabble or if there's been a one-off disagreement, that doesn't mean it's bullying. Bullying has quite a specific definition, and researchers generally agree on this, which is unusual because most researchers don't agree on too many things. But the definition of bullying is a pattern of repeated intentional aggression where there's a power imbalance, and it comes in all sorts of different forms. So you've got physical bullying, which is the old school, I'm going to flush your head down the toilet sort of thing that I grew up with in the 1980s, or just hitting, kicking, shoving, damaging property, stealing things. That's your physical kind of bullying. You've got verbal bullying, which is your name calling and your teasing and the threats and insults that people spray at one another. You've got social bullying. Social bullying is really insidious. This is the I'm going to tell everybody things about you kind of bullying. And it really, really hurts. It's excluding someone from a group, or it's manipulating relationships so that somebody looks bad. And of course, with technology over the last decade and a half, 2 decades, we've now got cyberbullying, which is using tech to harass or intimidate or humiliate someone. And that might not just be saying horrible things online. It could be posting embarrassing photos or videos and spreading rumors and getting everybody to gang up on somebody online. So that's pretty much where we'd land in terms of a definition of bullying. It's repeated and it's intentional aggression in one of those forms.
In preparation for this podcast, you sent me an article that was written by Professor Michael Bernard. He used to be at the University of Melbourne, and he said that the top 3 forms of bullying behaviour that we see are being made fun of, deliberately leaving people out, and nasty rumours.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I thought, I don't think there is a single person on the planet who would not have experienced any one of those 3 things at school at some point.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, this is life, right? Relationships are tricky and people do and say things that are unkind to other people. What we're talking about here, though, is not just that somebody gets left out or that somebody is made fun of or that somebody has something horrible said about them behind their back. It's repeated and it's intentional. The intention is I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to make you pay a price. I'm going to make you suffer. And this is the best way that I can do it. And
I guess my point is that everyone having experienced that kind of behaviour, I'm not suggesting incessant behaviour, but has experienced that, knows what it feels like, knows what it feels like to sit in that place. And I really struggle to to understand why, if you know what it feels like, you would want to inflict that kind of pain on somebody else.
Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, there's one central word that I would use that describes why bullying happens. There'll be some academics and scholars who would disagree with this as an assessment, but from my view of human nature, human relationships, my reading of the research and my own personal experience, as well as what we've seen in our family, and my years of traveling around the country in and out of schools and hearing these conversations again and again and again, my sense is that bullying primarily occurs, not always, but primarily occurs as a result of a young person's desire for status. Status is an indicator of how powerful you are. And the higher your status, the more people will defer to you, the more you can get away with, the more stuff happens. Status is the primary motivator for bullying.
I don't know if I agree with that. I actually think, for me, I think it's hurt people. And while social status might be the outward motivator, deep down, every one of these children is lacking something in their lives.
Yeah, look, that's fair. It's not necessarily disagreement like you think that it is. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that some studies have found that bullying is associated with lower socioeconomic status, including economic disadvantage, and poverty and low parental education. So it can be a desire to gain status and push people around. What's really interesting, though, ask me who's most likely to do bullying, low status or high status kids.
Oh, it's high status, 100%.
You didn't even need to ask.
No.
Yeah, and so what's really going on here is these kids are basically saying, I'm demonstrating my power, my status, my dominance by pushing you around, by inflicting pain, by hurting, and I'm maintaining my position at the top of the totem pole because if I do this, everyone else will be too afraid to challenge where I'm sitting.
Yeah, when I think about it, like literally 9 times out of 10, these kids are at the top of the social ladder. They don't have to prove anything, and yet there is this sense that they need to.
So pulling it back to what you highlighted, being deliberately left out or being made fun of or having rumours spread about you, in so many ways, and I don't want to, I want to be careful with the way that I say this. These things hurt. You've highlighted that. We've already covered that. But when you look at them in isolation and you say, somebody making fun of you, how serious is that really? In some ways, you could say it's not that big of a deal, depending on what your mindset is and how you feel about yourself and how other people respond.
So I feel like when we talk about bullying behaviour, there's actually 2 sides to the coin. There is a need to help children who have this desperate need to be at the top of the social ladder,
right?
Learn what would be deemed as appropriate, and I'm going to say kind. It just comes down to being kind, kind behaviour. But on the other side, we've got the children who are the recipients of this really bad behaviour.
I would say the victims rather than the recipients, but I know what you mean.
I don't love using victim. Like as soon as we use that word, what we essentially do is take away
it is a disempowering
an individual's power. I get it, and they are being victimized, but as soon as I believe I'm a victim, then I have no choice. And so the second part of this problem is, how do we empower children? Across the country, across the world, how do we empower them to have enough understanding that they can protect themselves against other people's negative behaviour?
Yeah, we're really good at encouraging upstanding, not bystanding. That is, having people come to somebody's aid if they're being bullied. We do a reasonable job of identifying bullies, and we do a so-so job, depending on the school, the context, the environment, a so-so job of what's often called re-education. It's typically called restorative practice in schools, and I think there are some advantages to it. There are also some things that don't work out so well. I've seen it done absolutely terribly badly. So let's pick up on what you've highlighted. After the break, I'd like to share 5 things that we can do to help kids who are being bullied or who have been bullied or who may be bullied to be emotionally strong, to be resilient in the face of that bullying so that we don't keep seeing the headlines that we're seeing. Bullying causes emotional distress. It's associated with academic difficulties, physical health problems, and significant social challenges. Kylie, in the second half of our podcast, we're going to look at 5 things that we can do to help our children if they have been, if they are being, or perhaps if they ever are going to be bullied.
Number 1, absolutely imperative. We listen, we believe, and we validate our children when they come home and tell us stories that are painful.
If one of our children is experiencing pain in a school context, or maybe it's at sport or little athletics or a drama or whatever it is that they're doing after school, if a child came home and they were not believed when they said things aren't going so well, the kids are giving me a hard time, or if we weren't noticing their demeanour as they came in, I can't think of much that would be more
damaging.
Yeah, more damaging, more discouraging than for parents to not be there with their kids. Fortunately, I don't think that happens often. But to me, this is critical. We can't progress things at all unless the kids know that they've been seen and heard and valued. There's some connection, and that we've listened to them and believed them and let them know it's not their fault. Like, actually be there in the moment with them.
We talk about helping our children feel empowered. Number 1 is all about giving children power.
Yeah, totally. So for me, that's it. That's the first thing we need to do. If your child says they've been bullied, just listen to them, accept what they've said, let them know that sounds like it's really hard. This is sounding pretty awful and it sounds quite serious. What else can you tell me? And just listen.
Number 2, document.
This isn't necessarily too complex. Basically, write down what they tell you. If there's anything online, take screenshots, take photos on another device. Please note, if there's anything explicit involving underage children, be very, very careful with what you do, because there are laws against it and you could be charged if you have something on your device. It's absolutely imperative, though, that you document what is going on so that if things accelerate, if things are amplified, you've got things noted from the very outset. Just make sure you know where you write this stuff down.
And I think it's important that our kids understand and know that if anything behaviour-wise comes up on their screen that they have concerns about, don't delete it before you go and talk to an adult. We've had too many times where we've heard, or our children have come to us and told us after the fact, and there's nothing left.
We had a minor skirmish last year that occurred with one of our kids. Everything was deleted. And I was like, if you delete stuff, we can't work on this with you. Like, it makes it so much harder. So keep documentation, make sure that it's handy, know what you've written, know where you've written it, and make sure that you don't embellish. Just keep it really, really simple.
Number 3, it's really important to include the school.
Yeah, or whatever organisation is the third party here. So if there's somebody who's bullying your child, whether it's at school or at church or down at the local surf club, whatever, wherever, just make sure that you let them know straight away, hey, this is going on. We've taken some notes. We've listened to our child. We believe our child, and we want to work with you on finding a solution here.
So going back to that comment I made earlier, hurt people hurt people. One of the things that I have strived to live by throughout my parenting is the acknowledgement that there are no bad kids. Our kids are all having an experience, and life can be really, really tough on them, especially when they feel like they don't have choices. You know, parents break up and a loved one dies. Like, there are so many things that they literally have no control over.
Oh, there's still, you do this so much better than me. I get very, very frustrated when I see intentional cruelty, when I see injustice. It really fires me up. You do this so well, where sometimes it's just kids being clumsy. They're jealous because somebody likes somebody and that person responded to their friend rather than to them. They're upset because somebody got a better grade or somebody has nicer skin. I mean, we've got 6 daughters, right? We've been through it all. And from my point of view, when somebody is going to be that petty, I kind of get a little bit agitated. You're really great at saying they're kids, they're learning, they're clumsy, they're struggling with this. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt and support them through it. I know I'm supposed to do that, but as a parent watching my own child suffer, it can be really, really hard.
And so while I'm not about making excuses for people, I think that it's really important for our kids to be able to take other people's perspectives. In the case of severe bullying or bullying in general, I'm not making excuses for bad behaviour.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for us to all be able to show a little bit of grace towards one another, because when we're not able to do that, life is really, really hard.
Yeah, and the reality is there are not that many sociopaths out there. So if a child is behaving in a challenging way, dig deep enough and you'll find out what's going on. It's just very hard to do that, and usually you'll need to have the school doing that, or some other party getting involved in it.
Number 4, help your children build coping skills.
Okay, what I'm going to say now is kind of provocative. It can be a little bit challenging.
I've got a few provocative things of my own.
Gets back to that whole idea that you were saying that there is no victim as such. That in and of itself is provocative, but I guess what I would say is this. The way that you approach a situation determines the degree to which that situation impacts you. And if you can help your children to not be overwhelmed by what is going on from a bully perspective, then your children are going to do better. Yes, bullying is bad, but something that is bad is not the same as catastrophic. And if you can cope with bad and not take it personally, then there is a chance that you're going to be able to ride out this storm. Now, obviously, the more people that are involved, the more intense it is, the more it's following you home, the more it's into every nook and cranny of your life, the harder it is for that to occur. In other words, it moves from being bad in some cases to being catastrophic. But if you can utilize the power to choose that you've got to identify the difference between negative thinking and having a positive mindset, identifying, well, yeah, that is bad, but worse things can happen. If you've got that intrinsic capacity to cope, if you can recognize that it's really about them and not about you, and if you can minimize social media, research shows, I'm not trying to be insensitive here. Research shows that a good 90% of kids feel like they can manage if they can bring the right mindset to it. I consistently say on this podcast, trauma is not a result of the events that happen to you. It's a result of whether you do or do not process those events healthily.
Or how you process those
events. It's how you process them. That's right.
Yeah. We've been reading a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown over the last few weeks, and I've been writing down a handful of his quotes, and when you put them in light of what we're talking about, they're so powerful. He said, when we forget our ability to choose, we learn to be helpless. We can either make our choices deliberately or allow other people's agendas to control our lives. And the ability to choose cannot be taken away or even given away. It can only be forgotten. So in light of what we're talking about in relation to giving our children the capacity to cope with these challenging behaviours when they arise, the powerful and empowering thought is I get to choose. I get to choose whose voice I listen to. I get to choose whose opinion weighs most heavily in my life. Is it the kid down the street who doesn't know a bar about me and they've decided to send, some vicious rumors about me? Or is it my mum and dad who love and adore me? Is it my grandparents who have, showered me with love? Is it my uncle and auntie who, have been with me when I've been really, really cranky and they still love me? Is it those people that I spend lots and lots of time with? Or is it the kids at school who couldn't give two hoots about who I am or where I came from?
Yeah, the great challenge, and you and I are on the same page here, we agree. Of course, the tremendous challenge is that you can help your child to say, I am worthy, I'm good enough, I feel love, I'm in a wonderful environment that's supportive and healthy, but now I'm about to step back into the lion's den. I have to go to school where these people are ostracizing me, they're hurting me, they're doing these things. And this is why, the snitches get stitches is the thing that kids will say, and yet it's so vitally important that they tell somebody, a trusted adult, so that action can be taken. Otherwise, it really does feel like they're going back into the furnace every single day. It doesn't minimize the significant challenge and frankly the terror that some kids feel when they go to confront their bullies yet again for another day, because sometimes this stuff is really, really hard to stamp out.
Lastly, number 5.
Your number 5 is get professional help. Sometimes this stuff is just too serious and you might need to go and get help. Kids Helpline is there, Parent Line is there, Lifeline is there, 131114. That's 13 11 14. If this conversation has brought anything up for you where you feel like you need help, please contact one of the many bullying and mental health services that are available online. You might look at Beyond Blue as well. We'll link to them in the show notes, and you may even want to talk to your kids about it. Tough topic, and I really hope that something that we've said will be helpful. There's no easy way through it, but research shows that helping kids to know that they don't have to be overwhelmed by it and that it doesn't have to be catastrophic, by focusing on validating their feelings and then working on helping them to find value in themselves and in the things that they do, it seems like, from a research point of view, they can do okay. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. If you'd like more information and more resources about making your family happier, visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.